What's up, gamer? My name's Waluko, and today I want to talk about Resistance Fluxes in Path of Exile 2. A little before the release of the Return of the Ancients expansion, I was reading the patch notes for the update and I saw them mention the Resistance Fluxes getting added to the game, and so I made a video talking about that and speculating on what they might actually do, but it turns out they work a little differently than I expected. What they actually do is change all of the elemental resistance modifiers on an item into the same type of element. So for example, if you use a Blazing Flux on an item, that crafting material will transform all cold and lightning resistance modifiers on the item to equivalent fire resistance modifiers. What this means is if you use a Blazing Flux on an item that already has fire res and also has another type of elemental resistance on it, you'll actually end up with two full strength fire resistance modifiers, which will allow you to get previously impossible amounts of the same resistance type on any item you want. Like if you had 3 tier 1 elemental resistance modifiers on a ring or something, you could theoretically end up with as much as 135% fire resistance on that ring, just from the explicit modifiers. Now that's all well and good, but there are also a couple different types of resistance modifiers that you can find on items. For example, if you do any Abyss crafting, you may end up with a modifier that gives you a type of 1 elemental resistance and chaos res in the same modifier. So if you use one of the elemental fluxes on an item that has one of those modifiers, it actually only changes the elemental type of that modifier while allowing you to keep the chaos res part of that modifier. So it doesn't transform it from elemental plus chaos to a full elemental modifier, which is really nice and actually not how I expected it to work when I tried it the first time. The other type of elemental resistance modifier you may see is the all elemental resistance modifier. Using an elemental resistance flux on an item that has the all elemental resistance modifier does not actually do anything to that modifier, since it already gives whatever type of elemental resistance you're trying to change it to. In addition to the 3 fluxes that allow you to pick which type of elemental res is on your gear, there is one more type of flux which allows you to convert resistance modifiers into chaos resistance modifiers. These can be very powerful, but they do interact with the multi-res mods a little differently than the regular fluxes. Mainly, when you use a void flux on an item that has a hybrid elemental and chaos resistance modifier, the void flux will convert the hybrid modifier into a full chaos resistance modifier. On top of that, void fluxes have no effect on all elemental resistance modifiers. So in Path of Exile 1, there's a similar mechanic that allows you to use a crafting bench to change one specific type of elemental resistance modifier into another specific type of elemental resistance modifier. So for example, you can change a fire resistance modifier to a lightning resistance modifier. And when I saw they were adding these resistance fluxes in the patch notes, I kind of thought they would have some kind of effect similar to that. And I mean, they are still resistance swapping mechanics, so they are similar in that way, but in a way the Path of Exile 2 resistance swapping is actually more powerful than the Path of Exile 1 version, because it allows you to create items that otherwise couldn't exist. Like you'll never drop an item that has more than 1 fire resistance modifier on it, but now you can make a ruby ring that has 3 tier 1 fire resistance modifiers, and then you have not only the 135% from the explicit modifiers, but like another 25 on top of that, or whatever it is. And then you add fire quality on top of all that, and it gets even crazier. So I think that part of the resistance fluxes is pretty cool, but because they change every single elemental resistance modifier on an item into the same exact type, no matter what, the resistance fluxes are a little bit harder to use than the Path of Exile 1 resistance swapping mechanic. So if you're in a situation where you have 2 resistance modifiers on an item, and you only want to change one of them without changing the other one, then there's not actually a way to do that. It's a little unfortunate that we don't have that option, but if I look at it as a trade-off for the ability to make otherwise impossible items, then I kind of don't mind that aspect of how it works quite so much. I think if I actually had to complain about anything to do with resistance fluxes, the only thing I'm a little annoyed about is how rare they are to get as rewards from the Remnant encounters. But that's more of a complaint about the Remnant League mechanic, which may or may not be getting adjusted in the coming weeks. But what do you think of the resistance fluxes? Have they made your gearing process any easier? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like and subscribe for more like it. Lastly, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.